Hi guys, my name is Borrodante, and today let's check out Huion GT191. This drawing tablet display was provided to me by GearBest. This is a web store that has a huge selection of digital gadgets and devices, including a big variety of drawing tablets and displays. The link is in the description. I personally was provided with this tablet only, meaning I wasn't paid for actual endorsement of this device, so I'm gonna make sure this review is 100% honest. Okay, so let's open this giant box. Okay, so we have a box inside of a box. This looks much better. So right off the bat, this is a 19-inch graphic display with a full HD resolution with a battery pen that has 8000 pressure sensitivity and no tilt. Pretty much the way things go with the Chinese developers. Thank you for choosing Huion. Whew. Alright, an HDMI cable. HDMI to HDMI. Also, what seems to look like a VGA cable. I don't think I'm gonna need this, but I'm aware there's a big variety of the way you can connect this thing. Okay, this is a pen, and this is a pen. There are two pens in the box. I was also aware of that, but I keep forgetting. I was always weirded out by the thing that it has two pens in the box, but I assume this is the way you go about the fact that you have to charge the pens, even though you have to charge them very rarely, like once a month tops. Thing is, if you run out of the battery, you can use the second pen while the other one is charging. Kinda cool. Okay, a manual and a mini disc with the driver. I think we're gonna just go ahead and download it from the website for the latest version. Alright, I see this is a stand. Pretty graspy. Oh, it's a lot more slim than I thought of it when I was looking at it in the pictures and videos. Pretty slick looking. Alright, the last challenge, the actual display. Yep, here we go. Oh, this feels awesome. Oh yeah, an optional protective film, right? This is actually a giant film with the whole putting it on, labels and everything, like the way you do with your phone or something. Only a giant one. I'm gonna mess it up. I'm not gonna apply it right away, that's for sure. I always end up having so much bubbles and everything. Okay, there's a way to open it non-destructively right here. What a horrible screen! Oh wait, it says please peel off this mask before use. Okay. Oh yeah, this is beautiful. What an amazing size. Like, it's so perfect. I actually got to choose which tablet I wanted to review, and I actually chose this one, the 19-inch over 21 or 22 or any other inch display, because it feels like when you're working really closely, this would be like the optimal size. Bigger than that, like you can't see the whole screen at once when you just look at it so closely, you know? When it's a big screen at a distance, it's one thing, but this stuff you work on it really closely. I feel like this is gonna be like the best size I can possibly have. Okay, so we can see there's a rubbery area at the bottom, so this is gonna work as a part of the stand, I suppose. Where do we start? Do we connect the stand? I guess this is a big kit for connecting everything. Let's check it out. This thing is gorgeous. Okay, we have screws. We have a barrel for the pen. Oh boy, this is looking so cool. With the textures and everything. A bit heavier, not a mobile device, so we have a heavier stand for the pen. And 8 nibs inside. Oh, this is probably... Aha, great. A piece of cloth to clean the screen. Another cable, USB, I don't remember the name of this USB, but this is, I believe, a USB as well, to a generic USB. I suppose this goes into the computer. Now this is a power cable. Yeah, this is a European version with this kind of plug. In the store, there are like 4 different versions for all parts of the world. Any plug you need, you're gonna get the proper version. Okay, an actual legit screwdriver. That's cool. And this is the charger for the pen. Aha, the second half of the power cable. So, before we move on to connecting the stand, let's take a look at the pens. Okay, pen number 1. Wow, this is... I haven't seen this kind of design yet. It looks really cool with such awesome edges on this, on the whole pen. Really cool looking design. has a certain mass to it, a very nice mass. A very pleasant kind of plastic, no rubber on it, surprisingly. Huion has rubber kind of pens, but this one has no rubber with a very cool shape. This looks awesome, like it looks so cool. Never seen a pen with such a muscly kind of design. Okay, I assume the second one is gonna look the same. Yep, literally the identical second pen. Okay, I'm finally left with just the stand and 4 screws. Let's go ahead and attach those. Yeah, by the way, you can see the holes on the tablet and the back for the screws are in this rectangular shape, which means you can connect it to any kind of display stand, a universal kind of stand for the monitor. It totally supports it, but I'm personally actually very excited to just use this stand. It looks really cool, really promising. This looks awesome, like the mechanism of it, so cool. You just drag this thing upwards and you change the angle. Any angle you want, so cool. Okay, that was a lot easier than I thought it would be. So in the back, under the stand, we have HDMI, digital, display thing, VGA, a power supply, and the USB for the information. So basically you have 3 cables coming out of it, the way any Cintiq has. Video cable, info cable, and the power supply. Only in here we have 3 different options for the video cable. So that's pretty cool. Huion really tried to make this thing as universal as possible. Okay, there's a nuance on the stand. If it's as flat as possible, there is a little angle that makes this rubber edge not reach the table, so it actually stands this way on the hard edge of the stand itself. It's probably not exactly a good idea to use it at this super flat angle. Basically just going a little bit higher, like this, it already stands on all rubber. So yeah, this is it. This is what it looks like. Buttons. Yeah, this tablet, by the way, doesn't have any kind of express keys whatsoever. This is just a screen, which is actually something I'm very excited about, because if you're like me and you don't use express buttons and you just use a keyboard, this is perfect in a way that you don't pay for something you're not gonna use anyway. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, let's test the stand a bit more, right? Before I actually start using this thing. Oh boy, is this even safe? Pretty safe. It's absolutely vertical. Look at this stuff. This is just for watching movies now. Oh my god, this is so comfortable. Okay, so now I'm planning to plug this thing in, install the drivers and play around with it for a little while. I'll take a close look at the display, at the way the pen works and everything, and yeah, see you in a second. Okay, here we go. It's been about 24 hours now, and I've been playing and working with this thing almost the whole time. And I'm really happy that I took 24 hours to make sure I figure everything out, because in the end, I actually gotta say, I don't have a lot of bad things to say, but there are a few. So let's start with the pure tablet portion of the device. The input feels pretty much perfect. The device driver looks the same way it does on screenless tablets, except it's a screen one. Press keys are absent, so the first tab doesn't do anything. The second tab is for stylus, same thing as it goes everywhere. Very versatile way of combining any kind of things together. You can use a combination of any keys with any Control Alt Shift and Win with the middle click, right click, left click. clicks are separate, but everything else you can combine together any way you want. So that's really awesome. I love that I can, for instance, in Photoshop, set up my side button to have a Control Alt and right click to get the brush change the size as I'm just holding it without even touching. So yeah, everything else pretty much works the same. There's no news in here, like a pretty good reliable driver with one notable downside of not being able to have different profiles of settings for different programs. So when I'm switching from PaintStorm Studio to Photoshop, I have to change the settings of the side buttons manually or importing the previously exported configuration file, which is something you can do in it. Aside from that, this is probably my favorite driver of the Chinese developers' tablets. The drawing itself is actually really good. Very good feedback of the pressure sensitivity, very small delay of the strokes. It feels really good, like I'm actually relaxing as I'm painting or drawing. It really feels just right. You know, it's not like crazy super technology from the future, but I don't think I actually feel any difference from my Companion 2 in terms of just painting on the screen. Obviously there's no tilt, but I barely ever use it for the last couple of years, so I haven't seen any difference in the way I actually work. I tried the slow straight line test. I tried to actually create straight lines with the ruler to see if there's any wiggly lines going on, because sometimes you can, even making a perfectly straight line, it still will have like a little wiggle, and that wiggle will happen every time at the same direction at that spot. In this tablet, I barely ever noticed any. When I actually ran the test with the ruler, I haven't found any wiggling like that. But as I was drawing and like trying all over the surface, I think somewhere I've seen a little wiggle going on, but I'm not even 100% sure because it's really minor. To make it clear, the wiggle and the resolution steps in the slow line tests are the kind of things that you always point out something with them if it's not Wacom, because only Wacom has no compromise kind of thing. It's just perfect in all senses. But just take a moment and look up the price on the Cintiq tablet of this size and make some conclusions from that. Like, this thing is a lot cheaper. It's not overpriced at all, and you're just getting the things that you really need in the quality that you need and not just want to have because it's gonna be perfect. You can actually draw on this thing very well. No problem with the input whatsoever. That's one thing I can say for sure. Another thing with the pen nib mechanics, it generally works pretty good, but you actually have a microscopic, maybe like half of the millimeter distance of pressing a button, while you already start a stroke halfway into this pressing of the button, but you know, there's a distance that you go through vertically as you're making a stroke. If you can hear it, you can hear as I start the stroke and then as I finish it. That's because the nib goes back again. That's the kind of thing you don't usually hear with the Wacom Pro Pen, but it's really not that big of a deal, maybe just a little something to get used to. Now, as you can see right now actually from the reflection, I haven't applied the grainy film on top that comes in the box because I really found myself not needing one. With this size and the resolution of Full HD, which is not an Ultra HD resolution when you can see details in a super tiny scale, you don't really need that crazy control of your pen from the friction of the surface. And since I mostly work as a painter and not drawer, I don't really need that much, but even when I tried actually sketching, I really found myself doing it pretty easily. There is no problem at all. Even though this is 100% super slippery, glossy glass. And this is actual hard plastic. So this is a gliding situation. But I'm really happy with it, and I'm happy that I don't have any grain on the surface because glass is super smooth, so the quality of the image is not suffering from this at all. But yeah, if you really feel the need of having the friction, you have that in the box, just apply the film. But I personally just recommend you trying it for a couple of days, just working on the glass, because you actually might like it. Now, aside from that, with the software, I tried Photoshop and PaintStorm Freestorm Studio, which are two very different programs, no problems at all with mapping or anything, even having a crazy setup of 3 monitors right here. There was no problem with that at all. It just works perfectly. Now let's move on and look at this thing as a display, and that's where I had a problem at first. I still do, but there was a little work around it. The quality of the screen is where you pretty much get the understanding of why this thing is not crazily expensive while being a pretty huge drawing display. This is an IPS technology screen, which doesn't tell you much. It has 3000:1 number of contrasts, which is a bigger number than many other displays have, but again, it actually doesn't tell you much. When I first turned it on, it really felt like it was very washed out, meaning blacks were just dark grays. Then I was playing around a lot with the settings of the screen with the buttons at the bottom to try and make the colors work the same way I have them on my main display, which is also not color corrected at all or anything like that. I'm not a color correction crazy person, but I do know when I miss out on some color information. In this case, I was really afraid that I will have all the colors really light in the shadow. Now I was playing around with the settings, and so here we go. This way we'll be able to see. Pressing menu, and here we go. These are the settings I used that seem to be working the best way. 90 brightness, 45 contrast, echo standard, DCR off. Color temperature user, 50, 46, 45. And everything else pretty much doesn't matter. So these are the settings I ended up with to have the best color that I can get out of display itself. But I didn't stop there. I tried the basic software by Windows for color calibration, which didn't do much, so don't try that. It's just a tiny little correction of green, blue, yellow, whatever. You can do that with the buttons, so. But one thing that really helped, and I'm not sure if you can do that with different graphics card or anything like that, but with my NVIDIA graphics card, I had an option. Let me show you. And as I'm editing this video, I already have an update on this. The main thing with this display is that it has a limited dynamic range. The kind of limit you usually see on a TV. It does have a big range of brightness, but this brightness goes from not very dark to really bright. So generally this screen looks really well in a brightly lit room, which is where I'm sitting right now recording the video, but overall you just can't get a super dark blacks in it. It has the limit of 16 to 235 value information, which is usually a default range for watching a movie in your video player, so there's that. But one thing that I definitely found useful in the NVIDIA driver is changing the gamma of this display from 1 to 0.92. This way I made the shadows darker and lowered the contrast of the darkest grays, which was probably the main reason of value distortion that I was looking at first. So in the end I've got a pretty good representation of colors and values on a screen that works much brighter than a normal computer display. And as I generally work in a really brightly lit room, this works out pretty well for me. I really think either I just adapted or maybe the latest settings with the buttons on the display worked out better, but I really feel right now, 24 hours later, that I can actually work on this really well. Like I can see colors well now. And the blacks are much closer to being black. After doing all of that and getting what I think is the best color quality I can get from it, what I can say about the quality of the picture is it's far from perfect, but it's pretty close to just a generic display. When I compare the colors of this particular artwork on this screen and on my main screen, I actually see the same tint of yellow. Colors are pretty much the same. So yeah, that's on the colors. The colors are okay. They're not perfect. Now the sharpness of the image, the pixels themselves, I see them very clearly. It's a full HD resolution on a pretty big surface, so I can see the pixels, but they're not as giant as they would be on 21-22 inch, which also go with full HD resolution, so you will have the same amount of pixels stretched for a bigger surface. Not talking about Wacom, of course, that has Ultra HD 4K resolutions on those giant Cintiqs, but they go with the respective, or overpriced really, price tag. So there's that on the resolution. Two more things I have to say about this display. It has a quite of a noticeable motion blur when you move windows around or something like that. But thing is that right now I won't be able to show you because I think it's gone now. I don't see much motion blur. It's super sharp and high contrast right now. I'm not crazy, right? Like, I know this is a very stupid way to spot the motion blur with a 25 frames per second web camera, but it's sharp. Yeah, there is a little motion blur still, and the webcam does increase the effect, obviously, but the motion blur actually becomes a lot less obvious with time. Almost as if crystals of the display become more flexible after some time of work. I guess that's the case. So, this is one thing that I wanted to mention that is gone now, and the other thing is basically, since this is a kind of a compromise sort of a display, something that you would expect from it is that the angle of view is not very big. When you're working in front of it, it looks good, it has a decent contrast, but even like when I'm sitting in front of it like this, okay, something like this, only colors are actually a lot more saturated on the screen. So yeah, you can see how on the edges you have some kind of lighting going on, and if I move here, it will be gone, but at an angle we have a pretty noticeable increasement of brightness in the dark gray. This is not actually black, this is dark gray, this is black. And at this point, I'm pretty much done with anything negative to say about this model. I really like this device. I'm gonna be using it for sure, unless colors for some reason will fail me again. But you guys will be able to see that in the nearest future episodes. I'm gonna be working on this display for sure. Oh, speaking about the negative parts, for my personal setup, the cables, the HDMI cable specifically, is kind of short. If it would be just 10 centimeters longer, this, whatever that is in inches, 4 inches. If it would be just 4 inches longer, I would have no problems with that. But yeah, the cables, I think they're like 2 meters long. What else? The nuances that I have to mention. Obviously, there are no side buttons and you have to use the keyboard, while the device is noticeably big, so you have the keyboard on the side. The stand really allows you to kind of like move the keyboard closer to the center of the tablet like this and just use your hand in here and just use the basic left side of the keyboard buttons the way you want. Also, of course, there is an option of using the keyboard on your lap if you have a wireless keyboard, but I didn't find it necessary to do that once while I was using it. This works really good for me like this. Now, I think I mentioned everything in details that I think is possible to mention. Now for the general impression. Right now, I actually really love this thing. When I set up the colors properly, it's just so good to have this size of the screen. Honestly, I'm really impressed that you can get this kind of device for $500. This feels like the dream come true situation when you can afford a screen like this. Oh yeah, one more thing that I always should mention if I talk about the graphic displays is the parallax. The parallax is another thing where you have the compromise situation. It's noticeably strong. If you'll take a look at the drawing process closely from the side, you will notice a good 2, maybe even 3 millimeters of distance between the contact of the tip of the pen with the glass and the actual colors of the pixels where the stroke is happening. Now, this is a common way to talk about the graphic display when you talk about its quality and technology, and many people consider it a very important thing. So there I mentioned it, the parallax is pretty noticeable, but right away I'm gonna say that I don't care about it at all. I don't care about having any kind of parallax on the graphic display whatsoever, because I actually intentionally calibrate this kind of devices to have a certain distance even horizontally. Like, you can see I have an actual distance, like the point is showing up to the left upper side. And I did that intentionally. You can actually set it up the way that you won't see any distance between the tip and the actual cursor. Using the settings in the driver with this button, you will have a thing going on. I'm not sure if I can do that or I'll mess up the recording, but it's a simple procedure And when I do it, I actually put my pen nib a bit to the bottom right to have a little distance. Because one thing that I always talk about, why I'm not 100% fan of generally the screen tablets, is because you cover your own work process with your own hand. And by having this little distance, I can see what I actually draw. It's just much better. Because the nib of this thing doesn't tell me anything. It's always the same thing. The shape of the brush and the color only changes in the program. So there is no value for me to have zero distance from the nib to the actual color of the stroke. It should better get out of the way to let me see what I'm doing. So yeah, I was actually happy that I had this option of calibration to shift the position of the cursor a little bit. Now I actually work on this device the same way I used to work on my Companion 2, but now I have a much bigger display with a native Full HD resolution that shows up with very sharp pixels, so it's just perfect for me. So yeah, the general impression, I gotta say, it's kind of hard to explain how relaxing and how just immersive the process of painting is when you have just this big piece of artwork in front of you, and also to the side you have a big panel with all the settings, and on the other side as well. Like, there's room for everything. You don't have to do this and look really closely to the screen. You can sit like a human being and work. So yeah, this is really amazing to have this kind of size. I'm not sure that I'll ever be able to like appreciate a bigger screen like 22. Maybe I would if I ever try it, but 19 feels like more than enough, especially considering that it fits in the same amount of pixels of Full HD. So yeah, I really believe this is the model that is like the perfect choice in this price range. There are probably newer models from Huion and maybe other brands as well. You can even find those on GearBest from the link in the description. But generally, I do recommend this device if you're on the budget, but keep in mind that you'll have to do some adjustment work with the colors. I think the adjustments that I mentioned before for the display and the color space settings from the graphics card are the two things that will really make the whole thing much better. So yeah, this is it for the Huion Cambest GT191. Tell me guys what you think about this device. Maybe you know something, maybe you actually have this one. Tell me what your experience is. But for now, I'm just really happy that I have this thing to work with in the future episodes. So you will definitely see this device more in the future. Check out the links in the description. And I thank you for watching. If you did, I guess you did. If you're here, leave a like and subscribe. Tell a friend. Draw from the shoulder. Do whatever you want. But seriously, draw from the shoulder. It's much better. And I will see you in the next one. Bye. Barely any motion blur. Colors are much better. It almost feels like this display just needed to warm up a little bit, and now it's just become the way it's supposed to be. Also, this thing is just, I can't even describe to you how good this is.